All right. So the question is $35,000 available through Hometown Heroes July 1st. Is this true or is this false?
Well, Pamela, I've had lots of realtors contacting me and buyers contacting me saying that they want to use Hometown Heroes starting July 1st. However, normally, the e-housing authority sends emails to us lenders asking us to take like a refresher class because they typically change the rules a little bit every year, bump up salaries, that are eligible, etc. So when my client contacted me and was making a purchase, was ready to actually purchase and was actually even under contract, she said, I want to use Hometown Heroes. I was like, great, sounds like a wonderful idea. I said, when does it open up? Because I hadn't seen anything. She's like, oh, my realtor told me July 1st. I was like, great. So I hung out for a day or two. And then I thought, I should probably check the website. And I did. And I guess you can explain the letter that I found.
So here's what Jennifer found, and this is where the true or false comes in. So we thought we would come to you today, share with you some information because if you've been hearing the buzz about Hometown Heroes, and if you're curious, if you look on the YouTube channel, we actually did a video about this a while ago. First time we went through with Hometown Heroes. So here's what it
Yes.
says. If you can see this on the screen, also we'll pop this and make it available to you. Just send a DM below, a comment below, depending on what social platform that you found this video, and then I'll be happy to send it to you as well. So we have information here. It says there continues to be a great deal of misinformation circulating on social media and through various marketing efforts, advertising relaunch dates, and other inaccurate information. Please do not be misled by third parties who do not know what they are talking about. I didn't make that up, nor did I even use those words. I probably wouldn't have said it that way. But,
Either.
right, we don't speak that way, but that's what it says here. So it says Florida Housing Finance Corporation will issue a notice to all lenders confirming a rollout date for HTH, which is Hometown Heroes, and if any changes are being made to this program. In the interim, please stop emailing and calling and communicate this information with your real estate partners and borrowers accordingly. Please consider the other available DPA programs that we offer to assist your buyers with their home purchase. So typically, and there's some other helpful links in here as well, some other information, but let's just talk through this a moment. There's a couple of things, Jennifer, and you and I run into this all the time, and they say it here. I might not have said it quite so directly, but it talks about the misinformation, not be misled by third parties, right? Who
Yeah.
do not know what they are talking about. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that a little bit. So you had a client actually come to you and say, hey, I heard about Hometown Heroes. And they didn't hear it from you as being the source, and you did the research, and then you were the one who educated the buyer. We sometimes have to be the bad guys because we look at the information and then we share it with the public, hence what we're doing now. So
Yes.
let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the Hometown Heroes program, what it was in the past
Mhm.
and what it could potentially be. But let's also talk about misled information in this business.
Yeah, so in the past, Hometown Heroes was 5% of the purchase price up to $35,000, which could be given as a down payment assistance second loan to borrowers who qualify based on employer. They have to work for a brick and mortar in the state of Florida. They have to make under a certain dollar amount household income. So there's a few things that they qualify. In the past, the interest rate has been very comparable to FHA and conventional rates with a buy down. So it was a great program. The interest rate was awesome. My client that came to me and wanted to use it, she was going to get like $27,000, which helped her significantly to purchase this house. And because she had been told the Hometown Heroes was coming back July 1st, she decided to look for a higher value home so that she could get more of what she wanted because she knew that she wouldn't have to use all of her savings to get into a higher valued house. So, because my client ended up being in the situation where, she has a family, she's a first time home buyer, and she had been looking about 50 to 60,000 less in values because she didn't want to use all of her money that she had worked so hard to save, which I understand that. And the area that she's buying in Palm Beach County, her payment is going to be around $4,100 a month, which,
Can I interrupt
you
you a
know,
moment? I want to make
yeah.
a real quick note of what you just
Mhm.
said. Because
Okay.
you were this speaks to who you are. And when they talk about misleading people and third parties
Mhm.
misleading, and this is going to segue into another little part of this that I'd like to touch on, but I want to
Okay.
stop there for just a moment. I want to acknowledge you because that's who you are. At the core of who
Yes.
you are, and one of the reasons that we have these relationships that we develop in this business, we're not just a fly-by-night business that you just
No.
happen to see on the internet. And that's where the human essence of this business is, or for me, a
Mhm.
mermaid essence, right?
Yes.
Kind of throw that in there. But it really is who we are at the very core of who we are. So I don't want to glaze over that. You said something that was very important. You took the time, you educated her, whereas someone else might have strung her along, maybe. And I'm not saying people do this, but I know that it sometimes has happened, right?
It,
And
it
you've
sometimes
helped
it just
deals.
happens where people don't double check things. It's
They
not
don't double
intentional.
check, and then they flip you to
Mhm.
another program just to get you
Mhm.
into the house, right?
Mhm.
So I
Correct.
wanted to make a very conscious effort to acknowledge that. So keep going with what you were saying about her. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I think that that's
Okay.
important for people to know.
Yeah, so my client technically has enough money to close on this house, and her debt to income ratio falls within actually fairly decent, limits. She's not maxed out on this house, but she's going from having no house payment because she lives with her parents to then a $4,100 a month house payment, which she's fine with as long as she can maintain her savings that she has. So Hometown Heroes was going to help her, come to closing with only $9,000 instead of needing $40,000. And so she would have been able to maintain her nest egg, which made her feel more comfortable with having that high of a mortgage payment as a first-time home buyer. So, and that's what when I was discussing with her, I said, I'm assuming that the most important thing for you is not necessarily the monthly payment, but keeping your savings account intact so that you have that cushion, which makes you feel better about what you're doing. And she said, 100%, Jennifer. And, and that's when I told her, I said, well, I emailed her what her closing costs would be without Hometown Heroes, which she does have the money to close that. She's still in her inspection period, so she can back out for any reason. And, so
Although, let me interrupt for a second.
Mhm.
We are not attorneys, we are not accountants, we are not
Correct.
any of those. You always seek legal counsel if you would like
Mhm.
to go over any contracts. We can read the information, and we are given contracts in the state of Florida that we could fill in by the attorney. So I just want to make that little note. Not telling
Yes.
you what to do, but we are telling you what the limitations tend to be in the contracts, depending on what contract you have in Florida, which is why it's
Yep.
very important, again, to work with someone who is familiar with the contracts. So you could even mention something like that or say, look at
Correct.
paragraph such and such in line such and such.
Mhm. Exactly. And so she legally, can get out of the purchase contract up until this coming Wednesday.
Okay.
So I told her, I said, so here's the information. I gave her numbers so that she could see if you want to move forward, because it's a great house. I'm like, if you want to move forward, here's the numbers. Here's what you need to bring to closing if you're not using Hometown Heroes. And so that's what I did. And I don't know what she'll choose. I think I have an idea of what she'll do. But yeah, definitely a game changer.
Well, you armed her with the information, right?
Mhm.
You armed her with the information to be able, these
Yes.
are the tools in your toolbox. This is what happens when you work with someone. There's a lot of talk about being able to buy houses online. There's a lot of companies that are trying to do
Yes.
that. But at the end of the day, there's no one on the other end of that chat bot. There's no AI that has lived through all of these experiences. We're training
Correct.
AI.
Mhm.
And you saw an article that you sent me yesterday that I'm actually going to try out because I do think that it's a great resource. Uh, at the end of the day, though, nobody was going to tell her that if she was just communicating online. There was no one that was going to say to her, here's your option. Here's
Of
what
course not, especially since she technically has money to close the deal. So if I would have just been a robot or somebody who wasn't paying attention, didn't care, then she could have gone through this process, been out of her inspection period date, been moving through, and then find this out, but still qualify, which means that she would have been legally bound to purchase that house, to use the majority of her savings, and have a $4,100 a month house payment.
And in this economy that we're in presently, whenever you watch this video, take a look at the date. In the current economy and having lived through, both of us have lived through
Mhm.
short sales. We've lived through that time. And
Yep.
I always love to share the story. I only had three people that ever went into foreclosure during the short sales. Ask any agent who lived during that time and ask them how many of their clients went
Yeah.
into foreclosure or short sale. I had three, and I was closing 4 transactions per month the entire years leading up to that. So that's an awful lot of people to only have three. I mean, we're talking less than 1%, maybe into a quarter of a percent of the people.
And that's because you protect your clients and really listen to what's important to them. And if they're choosing to put themselves in a situation that could potentially turn bad, we warn them. Obviously, everything is the client's decision. It's not ours, but we give all of the information, not just the information that we want to present.